The steam whistle pierced through the afternoon air of Dalhart, Texas, announcing the train's arrival with a shriek that made Olivia Sullivan's heart hammer against her ribcage. She gripped her worn leather valise so tightly, her knuckles turned white, standing on trembling legs as the locomotive hissed to a stop at the platform. Through the smudged window, she could see figures moving about, cowboys and townspeople going about their business in this dusty frontier town that was supposed to become her new home. The year was 1885, and she had traveled all the way from Boston to marry a man she had never met, a rancher named Herman Gaines, who had promised her a comfortable life in his letters. But Herman Gaines was not the man waiting on that platform. The conductor helped her down the metal steps, his weathered hand steadying her as her boots touched Texas soil for the first time. The heat was oppressive, nothing like the mild June weather she had left behind in Massachusetts. Sweat beaded on her forehead beneath her traveling bonnet, and she searched the sparse crowd for a man matching the description Herman had provided. Tall, brown hair, mustache, carrying a sign with her name. She saw no such person. Miss Sullivan. The voice came from her left, deep and gentle, with a drawl that spoke of years under the Texas sun. Olivia turned and found herself looking up at a man who was decidedly not Herman Gaines. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 26 or 27 to her 23 years, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath his hat and eyes the color of strong coffee. He wore typical cowboy attire, dusty from a day's work, and his expression was somber as he removed his hat respectfully. "I am Olivia Sullivan," she managed, though her voice quavered. "I am looking for Herman Gaines. Are you working for him?" The man's jaw tightened, and something flickered in his eyes that made her stomach drop. "Miss Sullivan, my name is Carson Gray. I work at the Gaines Ranch. I need to speak with you about Herman." The world tilted slightly. Olivia felt her knees weaken, and Carson Gray stepped forward immediately, his strong hand gripping her elbow to steady her. The trembling that had started on the train intensified, spreading through her entire body. "What has happened?" she whispered. "Let us get you somewhere to sit first," Carson said. His voice was kind but firm. "You have had a long journey. Tell me now." Olivia's green eyes met his, and despite her fear, there was steel in her voice. "I have traveled 1,500 miles. I deserve to know why my intended is not here to meet me." Carson respected that. He nodded slowly. "Herman passed away 4 days ago. Heart gave out while he was working cattle. It was quick. He did not suffer." The platform seemed to spin. Olivia had never met Herman Gaines, had only known him through a dozen letters exchanged over 4 months. But he had represented safety, security, a new beginning far from the shame and poverty that had driven her from Boston. Now that future had evaporated like morning dew under the brutal Texas sun. "I see," she said, though she did not see at all. Her mind raced frantically. She had $23 to her name, no return ticket, and knew not a single soul in the entire state of Texas. Carson watched her carefully, seeing the panic beginning to bloom in her eyes despite her attempts at composure. "Miss Sullivan, you are safe with me now. I give you my word." Something in the way he said it, in the steadiness of his gaze, made her want to believe him. But she had learned long ago that believing in the promises of men often led to disappointment. "That is kind of you to say, Mr. Gray, but I fail to see how I am safe. I have traveled here to marry a man who is now dead. I have very little money, and I know no one in this town." Her voice remained calm, but tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. "Herman was my friend," Carson said quietly. "He talked about you constantly these past months, showed everyone your photograph, read parts of your letters. He was excited to start a life with you." The least I can do is make sure you are taken care of until you figure out what you want to do next." "Out of friendship?" Olivia asked, suspicion creeping into her tone despite herself. "Out of friendship," Carson confirmed, "and because it is the right thing to do. Now, I have arranged a room for you at the Dalhart Hotel. It is modest but clean. Will you let me take you there?" Olivia had little choice. She nodded, and Carson picked up her valise as if it weighed nothing. As they walked through the dusty streets of Dalhart, she took in her surroundings. The town was small, consisting of perhaps 24 buildings clustered around the railroad tracks. There was a general store, a saloon, a church, the hotel, and various other establishments that spoke to the basic needs of a frontier community. Horses were tied to hitching posts, and the few people they passed stared openly at her, curiosity evident in their faces. The hotel was indeed modest, a 2-story wooden structure that had seen better days. The proprietor, a round woman named Martha Keene, greeted them with sympathy in her eyes. "This is the bride Herman was expecting," Carson explained. "She will be staying here for a bit. Put it on my account." "Carson Gray, you cannot pay for my lodging," Olivia protested immediately. "I will not be indebted to a stranger." "You are not a stranger. You are a friend of Herman's, which makes you a friend of mine." Carson's tone left no room for argument. He turned to Martha. "Make sure she has whatever she needs." Martha nodded and handed Olivia a key. "Room 6 upstairs. I will bring up some water so you can wash off the travel dust. Supper is at 6 if you are hungry." Carson set down her valise and turned to face Olivia. In the dim light of the hotel lobby, she could see the genuine concern in his expression. "I know you have no reason to trust me, Miss Sullivan, but I want to help. Herman would have wanted that." "Why?" The question burst from her before she could stop it. "You do not know me at all." "No," Carson agreed. "But I knew Herman, and he was a good man. He chose you, wrote to you, wanted to build a life with you. That tells me something about your character. And besides, nobody should be alone and afraid in a strange place if it can be helped." Olivia felt the first tear slip down her cheek, followed quickly by another. She turned away, mortified by this display of emotion in front of a man she had just met. Carson, with a sensitivity that surprised her, simply tipped his hat and moved toward the door. "I will check on you tomorrow, Miss Sullivan. Get some rest." After he left, Olivia climbed the narrow stairs to room 6 and locked herself inside. The room was small but clean, as promised, with a bed, a washstand, and a single window overlooking the main street. She sat on the edge of the bed, still clutching her valise, and allowed herself to cry for the first time since leaving Boston. She cried for Herman Gaines, a man she never knew but who had offered her hope. She cried for herself and the desperate circumstances that had driven her to answer a mail-order bride advertisement in the first place. She cried for her mother, dead 3 years now, and her father, whose gambling and drinking had left them destitute before he disappeared into the night. She cried for her lost position as a seamstress when the shop closed, for the landlady who had threatened to throw her into the street, for every humiliation and hardship that had led her to this moment, stranded in a Texas town far from everything she had ever known. When the tears finally stopped, she felt hollow but slightly calmer. Martha brought up a pitcher of warm water as promised, and Olivia washed her face and hands, unpinned her brown hair and shook out the dust, then sat by the window watching the sun set over Dalhart. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, colors so vivid they seemed unreal. Despite everything, she could not deny the stark beauty of this place. Supper in the hotel dining room was a quiet affair. A few other guests were present, mostly men who ate quickly and left. Martha served a simple but hearty meal of stew and bread, and though Olivia had not thought she could eat, Her body's hunger won out. Martha sat with her for a few minutes, her kind face creased with concern. "Carson Gray is one of the good ones," she said without preamble. "Whatever he told you, you can trust his word. You know him well, known him since he was 18 and came to work for Herman. That was 9 years ago. He is honest, hardworking, does not drink to excess or gamble his wages away. Goes to church on Sunday when he can. Herman trusted him completely, made him foreman 3 years back." This information settled something in Olivia's chest. "He said he would check on me tomorrow. And he will. Carson Gray keeps his promises." Martha patted her hand. "I know this is not what you expected when you got off that train. But you are not alone here. This town may be small, but we take care of our own." That night, Olivia lay in the unfamiliar bed listening to unfamiliar sounds. Somewhere a dog barked, horses moved in the street below, piano music drifted from the saloon. She thought about Carson Gray, about the steadiness in his voice when he had said she was safe with him now. She thought about the impossible situation she found herself in and the limited options available to her. She could return to Boston, though she lacked the funds for a ticket and had nothing to return to anyway. She could try to find work in Dalhart, though what work a single woman might find in such a small town, she could not imagine. Or she could accept Carson's help, at least temporarily, until she figured out a plan. That last option frightened her most of all, because it meant trusting a man she did not know. And trust, in Olivia's experience, was a luxury she could not afford. True to his word, Carson appeared at the hotel the next morning just as Olivia was finishing breakfast. He looked freshly washed, his dark hair still damp, wearing clean clothes though they were much the same as yesterday's, the typical garb of a working cowboy. "Miss Sullivan," he greeted her, hat in hand. "I hope you slept well." "As well as could be expected under the circumstances," Olivia replied. She had dressed in her second-best dress, a sensible dark blue cotton that would not show the dust of this place. "Mr. Gray, we need to discuss arrangements." "I agree. Would you take a walk with me? I can show you around the town properly." They stepped out into the bright morning sunshine. Dalhart was already bustling with activity, such as it was. Wagons rolled past, shopkeepers swept their storefronts, and cowboys led horses to the livery stable. Carson walked slowly, matching his pace to hers, and pointed out the various establishments. "That is Hendrick's General Store. They have most anything you might need. The church is at the far end of town. Reverend Thomas holds services Sunday mornings. Doc Morrison's office is above the barber shop. The post office is in the general store as well." "It is a very small town," Olivia observed. "Yes, but it is growing. The railroad has brought more people. 5 years ago, there were only a handful of buildings. Now we have almost 300 people in the area, counting the surrounding ranches." They had reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open prairie that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Olivia had never seen so much space, so much sky. It was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. Carson turned to face her. "Miss Sullivan, I want to make you a proposition." Her guard went up immediately. "What kind of proposition?" "Nothing improper," he said quickly, seeing her expression. "Herman's ranch. It is in a complicated situation now. He had no wife, no children. His closest living relative is a nephew in Kansas City who has never shown any interest in ranching. The property will likely be sold eventually, but that could take months to sort out legally. In the meantime, the ranch still needs to run. The cattle need tending, the hands need managing. I do not understand what this has to do with me. The ranch house needs someone to run it. Cook for the hands, keep the house, manage the domestic side of things. Herman was going to ask you to do that as his wife. I am asking if you would consider doing it as an employee. The pay would not be much, but you would have room and board, and it would give you time to figure out your next move. Olivia stared at him, processing this offer. You are offering me a job as a housekeeper. Yes, I know it is not what you came here for, but it is honest work, and it would solve your immediate problem of where to go and how to support yourself. Would I be the only woman on the ranch? Yes. But you would have your own room in the main house with a lock on the door. The bunkhouse where the hands sleep is separate. And I give you my word, Miss Sullivan, anyone who shows you disrespect will answer to me. There was something fierce in the way he said that last part that made Olivia believe him. She considered the offer carefully. It was not ideal, being the only woman among a group of men in an isolated location, but the alternative was equally unappealing. How many ranch hands are there? 6, including myself. Though I sleep in the foreman's cabin, not the bunkhouse. The men are decent fellows. A couple are married and live in town with their wives, come out during the day. The others are young, more interested in their work and their wages than causing trouble. And what happens when the ranch is sold? Then we all find new positions, I suppose. But that is months away at least, probably longer. It gives you time. Time. That was something Olivia desperately needed. Time to think, to plan, to figure out how to build a life from the ruins of her expectations. I accept your offer, Mr. Gray, but I have conditions. Name them. I keep my own wages, however modest. I am not working for charity. Agreed. If at any point I feel unsafe or uncomfortable, I am free to leave with no questions asked. Agreed. And you must stop paying for my hotel room. If I am to be an employee, I want our relationship to be strictly professional. Carson nodded slowly. I can agree to that. Though I already paid through today, so you will move to the ranch tomorrow. Does that suit you? It does. Olivia extended her hand formally. Thank you, Mr. Gray. I appreciate this opportunity. Carson shook her hand, his grip warm and strong but careful not to squeeze too tightly. Thank you, Miss Sullivan. Truthfully, we do need the help. We have been making do with burnt beans and stale bread for weeks now. Despite herself, Olivia felt a small smile tug at her lips. Well, I can certainly do better than that. They made arrangements for Carson to collect her the next morning with a wagon. Olivia spent the rest of that day making what preparations she could. She purchased some basic supplies from the general store using a bit of her precious savings, including fabric for an apron and some practical items she would need. The storekeeper, a friendly man named Arthur Hendricks, welcomed her warmly once he learned she would be working at the Gaines ranch. Herman was a good customer, he said. Paid his bills on time, never asked for credit he could not cover. Sorry business about his heart. Too young to go like that, only 42. Olivia had not known Herman's age, and learning it made his death seem even more tragic. 42 was not old, not really. He should have had years ahead of him. That evening she wrote a letter to her only friend in Boston, a fellow seamstress named Catherine, explaining the strange turn her life had taken. She did not know when or if Catherine would receive it, but the act of writing helped organize her thoughts. She was embarking on something completely different from what she had planned, but at least she was not destitute and homeless. Carson arrived promptly at 9 the next morning with a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 horses. He loaded her valise and the few items she had purchased, then helped her up onto the seat. As they rolled out of Dalhart heading west, Olivia took what might be her last look at the town for a while. It was not much to look at, this collection of wooden buildings in the middle of nowhere, but it had given her shelter when she needed it. The ride to the ranch took about 40 minutes. The landscape was flat and seemingly endless, covered in short prairie grass that rippled in the constant wind. Occasionally they passed small herds of cattle bearing the Gaines brand, a simple G inside a circle. Carson pointed out landmarks, a particular rock formation, a lone tree, things that helped navigate this seemingly featureless terrain. "It takes time to learn the land," he said. "At first, it all looks the same, but once you know it, every part has its own character." "Have you always been a rancher?" "No. I grew up in Tennessee near Nashville. My father was a shopkeeper, but after the war, things were difficult. I headed west when I was 17, worked odd jobs for a while, ended up in Texas when I was 18. Herman hired me on, taught me the cattle business. He was a good man, a good teacher. You cared about him." "I did. He was like a father to me in many ways. My own father died during the war and my mother passed a few years later. Herman gave me a chance when I had nothing, taught me a trade, promoted me when I proved myself. I owe him a lot." They fell into a comfortable silence after that. Olivia found herself studying Carson from the corner of her eye. He handled the horses with easy confidence, his attention on the road, but also constantly scanning the horizon with the practiced awareness of someone who spent his life outdoors. His profile was strong, his jaw shadowed with stubble that suggested he had risen too early to shave. There was something inherently trustworthy about him, though Olivia reminded herself not to be foolish. She had known him for barely 2 days. The ranch appeared gradually, rising from the prairie like a small settlement. The main house was a solid structure of wood and stone, single-story but sprawling, with a wide porch that wrapped around at least 2 sides. Nearby stood a barn, a bunkhouse, several corrals, and a smaller cabin that Carson identified as his own quarters. Beyond that were storage sheds, a smokehouse, and other outbuildings that spoke to a working ranch operation. Several men were visible working with horses in one of the corrals. They stopped to watch as the wagon approached, curiosity evident even from a distance. Carson pulled the wagon up to the main house and set the brake. "Welcome to the Gaines Ranch, Miss Sullivan. Your new home, at least for now." He helped her down, then called out to the men. "Jake, Sam, come meet Miss Sullivan." 2 cowboys approached, both young, probably early 20s. They removed their hats respectfully as Carson made introductions. "This is Jake Porter and Sam Delaney. They bunk here full-time. The others, Billy, Tom, and Martin, you will meet later. They are out riding fence today." "Miss Sullivan," Jake said with a nod. He was lanky and fair-haired with an easy smile. "Pleased to meet you, madam." Sam was darker, more reserved, but equally polite. "Madam, Miss Sullivan will be running the house," Carson explained. "Cooking, managing domestic affairs. I expect you all to treat her with complete respect. Anyone who does not will be looking for a new job. Understood?" "Yes, sir," they chorused. After the men returned to their work, Carson showed Olivia into the house. The interior was dim after the bright sunshine, and it took her eyes a moment to adjust. When they did, she saw a large main room that served as both living and dining area, with a substantial fireplace along one wall. Doors led to other rooms, bedrooms and storage, she assumed. Everything was dusty and cluttered, with dirty dishes piled on the table and clothes draped over furniture. "It is a mess," Carson admitted, looking embarrassed. "Herman was never much for housekeeping, and we have not done any better since he passed." "I can see that." Olivia set down her valise and rolled up her sleeves. "Well, I suppose I should get started. Let me show you your room first, and the kitchen." Her room was small but private, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and that all-important lock on the door. A window looked out toward the barn and corrals. It was sparse but clean, the one room in the house that appeared to have been prepared for her arrival. "Herman fixed this room up when he knew you were coming," Carson explained. "He wanted you to have a nice space." Something about that touched Olivia deeply. This man she had never met had cared enough to prepare a room for her, to make her feel welcome. She blinked back the sudden sting of tears. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, with a cast-iron stove, a good-sized work table, plenty of pots and pans, and a pantry stocked with basic supplies. It was also filthy, with grease coating every surface and the stove desperately needing a cleaning. "I will start here," Olivia decided. "Though I will need more supplies from town eventually. The pantry is low on almost everything. Make a list, and I will have someone fetch what you need." Carson paused, then added quietly, "Miss Sullivan, I know this is not what you planned for your life. But I want you to know I appreciate you taking this on. It means a lot to me, and it would have meant a lot to Herman." "I am doing it for practical reasons, Mr. Gray, not sentimental ones," Olivia said, but her tone was softer than her words. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." Carson left her to it, and Olivia threw herself into the task with determination. She started by opening windows to air out the house, then hauled water from the pump outside to heat on the stove. She scrubbed the kitchen from top to bottom, washed every dish, cleaned the stove until the iron gleamed, and organized the pantry. It was hard physical labor, but it felt good to accomplish something concrete, to see visible results from her efforts. By noon, she had the kitchen in decent order and started on a simple meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread. The men began drifting in around 12:30, drawn by the smell of cooking food. They lined up awkwardly, unsure of the new protocol, until Carson directed them to sit at the long table. "Miss Sullivan has prepared lunch," he announced. "We will eat together, civilized-like, and we will mind our manners." Olivia served the food, noting the appreciative looks on the men's faces. It was simple fare, nothing fancy, but it was hot and plentiful. The men ate with gusto, and the silence that fell was the silence of hungry men focused on their meal, not uncomfortable. "This is wonderful, Miss Sullivan," Jake said between bites. "Best meal we have had in weeks." "It is only beans and cornbread," Olivia demurred, though she was pleased by the compliment. "It is hot, it is tasty, and there is enough of it," Sam added. "That makes it wonderful in our book." Carson caught her eye from his place at the head of the table and nodded his approval. Olivia felt a small glow of satisfaction. This was a good arrangement, she told herself. Honest work for honest pay, nothing more complicated than that. But as she watched Carson interact with the men, answering questions about the afternoon's work, making decisions with quiet authority, she felt something stir in her chest that was decidedly more complicated than employer and employee relations. She pushed the feeling away firmly. She could not afford to develop feelings for anyone, especially not the man who had employed her out of charity and duty to his dead friend. Over the next few weeks, Olivia settled into a routine at the ranch. She rose before dawn to start breakfast for the men, then spent her days cleaning, cooking, and managing the household. The work was hard but satisfying, and the men treated her with unfailing respect and courtesy. She learned their individual quirks and preferences. Jake liked his coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. Sam had a sweet tooth and always looked hopefully for dessert. Martin was the oldest at 35, quiet and thoughtful. Billy and Tom were brothers, identical twins who finished each other's sentences and kept everyone entertained with their constant banter. And then there was Carson. He was always respectful, always professional, but Olivia could not help noticing the little things. The way he made sure she was never left alone with any of the other men unnecessarily. The way he carried heavy items for her without being asked. The way his eyes sometimes lingered on her face when he thought she was not looking. She told herself she was imagining things. Carson was simply a gentleman doing his duty, but her heart seemed determined not to listen to logic. One Sunday morning, Carson appeared at the house in his good clothes, his hair neatly combed, a Bible tucked under his arm. "Miss Sullivan, I am heading to church. Would you like to come along? I know you have not been to town since you arrived." Olivia had been so busy she had lost track of the days. Sunday, of course. She had not attended church in weeks, not since before she left Boston. "I would like that," she said. "Give me a few minutes to change." She put on her best dress, a green calico that brought out the color of her eyes, and pinned her hair up carefully. When she emerged from her room, she found Carson waiting on the porch, and the expression that crossed his face when he saw her made her pulse quicken. "You look lovely," he said simply. "Thank you," she managed, suddenly shy. The ride to town passed pleasantly. They talked about inconsequential things, the weather, the cattle prices, the news from the east that the railroad brought. But there was an undercurrent of something else, an awareness between them that had been building slowly over the weeks. The church was a simple white building at the end of the main street, already filling with townspeople when they arrived. Heads turned as Carson and Olivia entered together, and whispers followed them. Small towns thrived on gossip, and the arrival of Herman's mail-order bride followed by her employment at the ranch was certainly fodder for speculation. Reverend Thomas was a kindly man in his 60s who welcomed Olivia warmly. "Miss Sullivan, we are pleased to have you worship with us. Herman spoke of you often before he passed. He was looking forward to your arrival." "Thank you, Reverend. I am sorry I never had the chance to meet him. He was a good man, taken too soon. But I am glad to see Carson is making sure you are looked after." They took a seat near the back, and Olivia was acutely aware of Carson beside her, their shoulders nearly touching in the crowded pew. When they stood to sing hymns, his deep baritone blended with her soprano in a way that felt intimate, as if they were creating something beautiful together. The sermon was about faith in difficult times, about trusting in God's plan even when we could not see the path ahead. Olivia found herself listening intently, drawing comfort from the words. She had felt so lost when she stepped off that train, so frightened and alone. But somehow, against all odds, things had worked out. She had a place to stay, work to do, and she was beginning to feel the first tentative tendrils of belonging. After the service, several townswomen approached to introduce themselves. Martha from the hotel was there, along with the wives of some of the ranch hands who worked during the day. They were friendly and welcoming, and by the time Carson indicated it was time to leave, Olivia felt more connected to this community than she had expected. "That was nice," she told Carson as they drove back toward the ranch. "Everyone was very kind." "People around here are good folks," Carson said. "They judge you by your character and your actions, not where you came from or who your family was. It is one of the things I like about Texas. You ever miss Tennessee? Sometimes. But Texas is home now. I cannot imagine living anywhere else." "I am beginning to understand the appeal," Olivia admitted. "It is very different from Boston, but there is something about this place. The space, the freedom, even the hardships feel honest somehow." Carson glanced at her, something warm in his eyes. "I am glad you feel that way, Olivia." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips sent a shiver through her despite the warm day. She should correct him, insist on the formal address, but she found she did not want to. "You should call me Carson," he continued. "We see each other every day." Seems silly to stand on formality. "All right, Carson." She tested his name, liking the feel of it. "And you may call me Olivia." Something shifted between them in that moment, an invisible line crossed. They were no longer just employer and employee, no longer bound solely by duty and circumstance. They were becoming friends, and perhaps, if Olivia was honest with herself, something more. Summer deepened, and the heat became intense. The work continued, relentless as always on a working ranch. Olivia learned to time her cooking to the hottest part of the day, preparing meals when it was cooler in the early morning or late evening. She planted a small vegetable garden behind the house, coaxing tomatoes and squash from the stubborn soil. She mended the men's clothes, reorganized the entire house, and even helped with some of the lighter ranch work when needed. Carson was always nearby, a steady presence she found herself increasingly drawn to. He taught her to ride one of the gentler horses, patiently correcting her posture and encouraging her when she grew frustrated. He pointed out the different wildflowers that bloomed across the prairie, told her stories about the land and the people who lived there, shared his dreams of someday having his own ranch. "What would you call it?" Olivia asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch after supper, watching the sun set in a blaze of gold and crimson. "Gray Ranch, I suppose," Carson said with a shrug. "Nothing fancy." "And what would it look like, this ranch of yours, bigger than this one? More land, more cattle?" "A good house, sturdy and well built, a barn that does not leak when it rains, maybe some chickens, a proper vegetable garden." He paused, then added softly, "A family to share it with." Olivia's heart clenched. "You want a family someday, do you not?" "I know you came here to marry Herman, to build a life with him. That suggests you wanted those things too." "I did. I do." Olivia stared out at the horizon, gathering her thoughts. "I grew up poor, Carson. My father was not a reliable man. After my mother died, I was on my own at 19. I worked as a seamstress, barely making enough to pay for a rented room and food. When the shop closed and I had no prospects, answering Herman's advertisement seemed like my only option. I wanted security more than anything else, safety, a place where I belonged. And now I have those things, at least temporarily. But I have realized I want more than just safety. I want what you described. A real home, a family, someone to share life with, not just an arrangement on paper, but something real." Carson turned to look at her, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. "Olivia, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "When Herman died and I realized you were still coming, I thought about sending you a telegram, turning you back before you made the whole journey. But then I thought about you traveling all that way alone, arriving to find nothing, no one. I could not do that to you. So I decided to meet you myself, to at least make sure you were safe. I remember. You told me I was safe with you. I meant it then, and I mean it now. But what I did not expect was how I would feel when I actually met you." Carson ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "When you stepped off that train, trembling and afraid, looking for a man who was already in his grave, something happened to me. I wanted to protect you, yes, but more than that. I wanted to know you." Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. "Carson, I know it has only been a couple of months. I know you came here expecting to marry Herman, not to work as a housekeeper on his ranch. I know I have no right to say any of this. But Olivia, I have fallen in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, precious and fragile. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "I thought I was alone in feeling this way," she whispered. Carson's eyes widened. "You mean?" "I did not want to admit it, even to myself. I came here to marry one man, and now I find myself falling for another. It seemed wrong somehow, disloyal to Herman's memory." "Herman would want you to be happy," Carson said firmly. "He told me once that he chose you from all the other women who answered his advertisement because your letters showed spirit and kindness. He said any man would be lucky to have you. He said that, he did, and he was right. Olivia, I do not expect an answer right now. I know this is sudden, despite the time we have spent together. But I wanted you to know how I feel. I love you. And if you think you could ever feel the same way about me, I would count myself the luckiest man in Texas." Olivia stood and walked to the edge of the porch, needing a moment to compose herself. Everything was happening so fast, yet at the same time it felt right in a way her arrangement with Herman never had. She had never met Herman, never heard his voice or seen his smile. But Carson, she knew Carson. She knew his kindness, his integrity, his quiet strength. She knew the way he laughed at Billy and Tom's jokes, the way he settled disputes among the men with fairness, the way he always made sure she had everything she needed. She turned back to face him. "Carson, when I got off that train 2 months ago, I was terrified. I had traveled halfway across the country to marry a stranger, and I did not even know if I would be safe. Then you were there, and you told me I was safe with you now. It was the first time in years that I felt like someone was truly looking out for me. I meant every word. I know you did. That is why I fell in love with you." The words came easier than she expected, like a truth finally acknowledged. "I love you, Carson Gray. I think I started falling for you that very first day, though I would not admit it. Every day since has only made me more certain." Carson was off the porch steps and pulling her into his arms before she could take another breath. He held her close, and Olivia wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling safe and cherished in a way she never had before. They stood like that as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the stars began to appear in the vast Texas sky. Finally, Carson pulled back just enough to look at her face. "May I kiss you, please?" Olivia breathed. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid this moment might shatter. But then it deepened, becoming something more passionate, more certain. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, and Carson rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Olivia, not because you need security or because it is practical, but because we love each other. Be my wife." "Yes," Olivia said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They stood on that porch until full dark, talking and planning and stealing kisses like two young people discovering love for the first time. Carson wanted to marry as soon as possible, but Olivia insisted they wait at least a few weeks to make sure the gossip would not be too scandalous. "People will talk no matter what we do," Carson pointed out. "You came here to marry Herman, ended up working for me, now you are marrying me instead. That is prime gossip material. All the more reason to be circumspect. Let us wait until a decent interval has passed since Herman's death." "It is the respectful thing to do," Carson agreed, though he was clearly not happy about the delay. They decided on 6 weeks, which would make it mid-September. In the meantime, they kept their engagement quiet, telling only the ranch hands who were, to a man, delighted by the news. "About time, boss," Jake said with a grin. "We have all been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. Figured you would get around to it eventually." Those 6 weeks felt both endless and far too short. Olivia threw herself into preparing for the wedding and planning for her future. She wrote to Catherine in Boston with the incredible news, hardly believing it herself as she put pen to paper. She worked with Martha to plan a small ceremony at the church, with a modest reception at the ranch afterward. Carson bought her a ring, a simple gold band with a small ruby, and presented it to her one evening with endearing nervousness. "It is not much," he apologized, "but I wanted you to have something special." "It is perfect," Olivia assured him, slipping it onto her finger where it caught the lamplight. "I love it because it came from you." They stole time together whenever they could, rides across the prairie, quiet conversations on the porch, stolen kisses in the barn when no one was looking. Every moment together deepened Olivia's certainty that this was right, that Carson was the man she was meant to be with. She learned more about him during those weeks. He told her about his childhood in Tennessee, about losing his parents, about the hard years after the war when he wandered from place to place looking for work and purpose. He told her about finding Herman, about learning the cattle business from the ground up, about the satisfaction he found in honest work and the land he had grown to love. When I rode into Texas that first time, I thought I was just passing through, Carson said. I never expected it to become home. But this place gets into your blood. The sky, the space, the challenges. It is hard country, but it is honest. What you put into it, you get back. That appeals to me. Olivia told him about Boston, about the grinding poverty of her last years there, about the shame of having to answer a mail-order bride advertisement because she had no other options. I do not want you to think I am with you because I needed rescuing, she said earnestly. Yes, you helped me when I was desperate, but what I feel for you has nothing to do with that. I love you for who you are, not what you have provided. I know that, Carson assured her. And for what it is worth, I do not feel like I rescued you. I feel like you rescued me. I was just going through the motions before you came, working because it is what I do, but not really living. You have given me something to look forward to, something to build toward. You have given me hope for a future that is about more than just surviving. The night before the wedding, Olivia lay in her bed unable to sleep, thinking about how drastically her life had changed in just a few months. She had boarded a train in Boston expecting to marry a middle-aged rancher she had never met, expecting a life of comfortable monotony. Instead, she had found Carson, had found love, had found a place where she truly belonged. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the September heat finally broken by cooler temperatures. Olivia dressed in the new gown she had sewn herself, a simple white dress with green ribbon trim that matched her eyes. Martha helped with her hair, pinning it up and leaving a few curls to frame her face. You look beautiful, Martha said, tears in her eyes. Carson is a lucky man. I am the lucky one, Olivia replied, meaning it with all her heart. The church was full when Martha and Olivia arrived. It seemed the entire town had turned out for the wedding, along with all the ranch hands dressed in their Sunday best. But Olivia only had eyes for Carson, standing at the front of the church looking handsome and nervous in a new suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his eyes fixed on her with such love it made her breath catch. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Reverend Thomas spoke about love and commitment, about the sacred bond of marriage, about building a life together through joy and hardship. When it came time for the vows, Carson's voice was steady and strong. I, Carson Matthew Gray, take you, Olivia Ann Sullivan, to be my wedded wife. I promise to love you, to honor you, to cherish you, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as we both shall live. Olivia's voice wavered but held. I, Olivia Ann Sullivan, take you, Carson Matthew Gray, to be my wedded husband. I promise to love you, to honor you, to cherish you, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as we both shall live. When Carson slipped the gold band onto her finger to join the ruby engagement ring, Olivia felt tears slip down her cheeks. When she placed a matching band on his finger, Carson's eyes shone with moisture as well. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Reverend Thomas announced with a broad smile. Carson, you may kiss your bride. And he did, thoroughly and tenderly, while the congregation erupted in applause and cheers. The reception at the ranch was a joyous affair. The hands had helped clean up and decorate, and every family in the area seemed to have contributed food for the feast. There was music and dancing, laughter and celebration. Olivia found herself passed from partner to partner as the men took turns dancing with the bride, but she always ended up back in Carson's arms where she belonged. As the sun set and guests began to depart, Carson leaned down to whisper in her ear. Ready to go home, Mrs. Gray, Mrs. Gray. Her new name, her new identity, her new life. Yes, Olivia said. Let us go home. They said their goodbyes and walked hand in hand to the house that was now truly theirs, as Carson had purchased the ranch from Herman's nephew with money he had been carefully saving for years. The hands had tactfully made themselves scarce, camping out for the night to give the newlyweds privacy. Inside, Carson lit lamps while Olivia stood in the middle of the room feeling suddenly shy. They had been alone together countless times over the past months, but this was different. They were married now, truly joined in the eyes of God and the law. Carson came to stand before her, taking both her hands in his. "Are you happy, Olivia?" "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered honestly. "When I stepped off that train 3 months ago, I was so frightened. I thought my life was over before it had really begun. But you were there, Carson. You told me I was safe with you, and you have kept that promise every single day since. And I will keep it for the rest of our lives," Carson vowed. He pulled her close, and Olivia melted into his embrace. "I love you so much. I love you too. More than words can say." They kissed, and this time there was no need to hold back, no need to be proper or circumspect. They were married, committed to each other before God and man, free to express the love that had been building between them for months. Carson lifted her in his arms and carried her to what was now their bedroom, and Olivia laughed with pure joy, feeling cherished and desired and utterly safe. That night, they came together as husband and wife, learning each other with gentle touches and whispered endearments, creating an intimacy that went far beyond the physical. Afterward, lying in Carson's arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, Olivia felt a peace she had never known before. This was where she belonged. This was home. The months that followed were among the happiest of Olivia's life. She and Carson settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. They worked together running the ranch, Carson handling the outdoor operations while Olivia managed the household, but increasingly they collaborated on major decisions. When Carson wanted to purchase additional land, he discussed it with Olivia first. When Olivia wanted to hire a young woman from town to help with the housework once a week, she consulted Carson. Winter came to the Texas Panhandle, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. Olivia learned to appreciate the cozy evenings by the fire, Carson reading aloud from the newspaper while she sewed, the two of them simply enjoying each other's presence. The hands still lived in the bunkhouse, but they had their own space now, a cabin that Carson had begun building even before the wedding. In late February, Olivia realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another month to be sure before telling Carson, wanting to be certain before raising his hopes. But by mid-March, there was no doubt. She was carrying their child. She broke the news to Carson one evening after supper. They were alone in the cabin, the fire crackling cheerfully, and Olivia had been trying to find the right words all day. "Carson, I have something to tell you." He looked up from the ledger he had been reviewing, immediately attentive to the serious tone in her voice. "What is it?" "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. In fact, everything is very right." Olivia took a deep breath. "I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." The ledger fell forgotten to the floor. Carson's face went through a remarkable range of expressions: shock, joy, wonder, finally settling on a grin so wide it looked like it might split his face. "A baby, truly, truly. By my calculations, sometime in October." Carson let out a whoop of joy that probably carried all the way to the bunkhouse. He swept Olivia into his arms, spinning her around until she laughingly begged him to stop. "We are going to be parents," he said, wonder in his voice. "I am going to be a father." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Olivia assured him. You are patient and kind and strong. Our child will be lucky to have you. Our child will be lucky to have you, Carson countered. You are the strongest woman I know, Olivia. You came to a strange place with nothing, built a life from scratch, opened your heart when you had every reason to keep it closed. I am in awe of you. They stayed up late that night talking about the future, about names and plans and dreams for their growing family. Carson was adamant that Olivia should reduce her workload, that they should hire more help, that she should do nothing that might endanger herself or the baby. I am pregnant, not an invalid, Olivia protested, laughing. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time while still managing their households. But you are my wife having my baby, Carson said stubbornly. I am going to take care of you whether you like it or not. In the end, they compromised. Olivia would continue her normal activities, but would accept help when needed and would not overexert herself. Carson hired a young woman named Sarah from town to help with the heavy cleaning and laundry, which made life easier and gave Olivia some female companionship she had not realized she was missing. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Olivia suffered morning sickness in the early months, but nothing too severe. As spring turned to summer, her body changed, her belly swelling with new life. Carson was fascinated by every development, placing his hand on her stomach to feel the baby kick, talking to their unborn child, being generally attentive to the point where Olivia sometimes had to gently shoo him away so she could get work done. You are going to spoil this baby rotten, she predicted. Absolutely, Carson agreed without shame. This baby is going to know every single day how loved and wanted they are. In October, 2 weeks before the baby was due, Olivia went into labor. Carson, who had remained calm through stampedes and storms and every other crisis a ranch could throw at him, panicked completely. He sent Jake racing to town for Doc Morrison, paced the cabin like a caged animal, and generally got in everyone's way until Martha, who had come to help, firmly ordered him outside. Women have been doing this since Eve, Martha said. Go pace somewhere else. I will call you when there is news. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Olivia endured it with as much grace as she could manage, focusing on the fact that at the end of this ordeal, she would finally meet her child. Sarah and Martha took turns helping her, offering encouragement and cool cloths for her forehead, while Doc Morrison monitored her progress with professional calm. Outside, Carson wore a path in the dirt, pacing back and forth, Jake and Sam keeping him company and trying unsuccessfully to distract him. Every time they heard Olivia cry out, Carson winced as if he had been physically struck. This is torture, he muttered. How do women endure this? Because they are tougher than we are, Jake said simply. Always have been. Finally, in the early afternoon of October 15th, a baby's cry pierced the air. Carson nearly broke down the door getting inside, finding Martha holding a squalling bundle wrapped in a clean blanket. You have a son, Martha announced, beaming. A big healthy boy with a set of lungs on him. Carson's eyes immediately went to Olivia, who lay exhausted on the bed, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale but smiling. Are you all right? He asked, rushing to her side. I am fine, Olivia assured him. We have a son, Carson. A son. Doc Morrison placed the baby in Olivia's arms and Carson got his first good look at his child. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled, with a surprising amount of dark hair and eyes that were currently squeezed shut as he wailed his displeasure at being thrust into the world. He is perfect, Carson breathed. Absolutely perfect. Would you like to hold him? Olivia asked. Carson had handled newborn calves and foals countless times, but taking his own son into his arms was entirely different. The baby was so small, so fragile, yet so perfectly formed. As Carson cradled him carefully, the infant stopped crying, seeming to sense his father's presence. "Hello, son," Carson said softly. "I am your father, and that beautiful woman there is your mother. We have been waiting for you." The baby's eyes opened, unfocused but seemingly looking at Carson, and something in Carson's chest expanded until he thought it might burst. This was his son, his and Olivia's, created from their love, the beginning of their family. "What should we name him?" Olivia asked. They had discussed names endlessly but had not settled on anything definite. Now, holding his son, Carson knew exactly what felt right. "Henry," he said. "Henry Herman Gray, after your father and Herman." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Her father had been a disappointment in many ways, but he had given her life, and Herman had brought her to Texas, where she had found Carson. It was fitting that their son should honor both men. "Henry Herman Gray," she repeated. "It is perfect." The ranch hands were delighted to meet young Henry, each man taking a turn holding the baby with surprising gentleness for such rough cowboys. They vied for his attention, made ridiculous faces to try to make him smile, and generally behaved as if the entire ranch was now devoted to the care and entertainment of one small infant. "This child is going to be unbearably spoiled," Olivia observed to Carson one evening. Henry was 2 weeks old, and she had just retrieved him from Jake, who had been walking him around the yard pointing out various ranch features as if the baby could understand. "He is going to know he is loved," Carson corrected. "There are worse fates." As winter settled over the ranch again, Olivia marveled at how much her life had changed in just over a year. 14 months ago, she had stepped off a train in Dalhart, trembling with fear and uncertainty, her future a complete unknown. Now she sat in a warm cabin, her husband beside her, their son sleeping peacefully in a cradle Carson had built with his own hands. She had a home, a family, a place where she belonged. "What are you thinking about?" Carson asked, noticing her pensive expression. "About how I got here." "About that day at the train station when you told me I was safe with you. That was the moment everything changed." Carson reached over and took her hand. "That was the moment everything changed for me too. I had no idea that the frightened woman getting off that train would become the center of my entire world. I love you, Carson Gray. I love you, Olivia Gray, always and forever." The years flowed by like water. Henry grew from an infant to a toddler, then to a bright, curious little boy who followed his father everywhere, mimicking his walk and his mannerisms. When Henry was 3, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose Marie. 2 years after that came another son, James William. The cabin grew crowded, so Carson built an addition, then another, until they had a proper house with multiple bedrooms and enough space for their growing family. The ranch prospered under Carson's management. He expanded the herd, acquired more land, built new outbuildings and corrals. Olivia managed the household and helped with the bookkeeping, discovering she had a head for numbers that proved invaluable to the business. They hired more hands as the operation grew, and several of the men married, building their own homes on ranch property, creating a small community. Through it all, the love between Carson and Olivia only deepened. They had their disagreements, of course, as all couples do. Carson could be stubborn, Olivia could be sharp-tongued, and raising 3 children while running a ranch left them both exhausted more often than not. But they never went to bed angry, always talked through their problems, and never forgot the foundation of love and respect their marriage was built on. On their 10th anniversary, Carson took Olivia back to Dalhart for a rare night away from the children, who were being watched by Sarah and her husband. They had dinner at the hotel, much improved since the early days, and walked through the town that had grown substantially over the decade. "Remember when you first came here?" Carson asked as they strolled hand in hand down the main street. "This town was half the size it is now." "I remember being terrified," Olivia admitted. "I had no idea what I was going to do or how I was going to survive. But you did survive. You thrived." "You are the strongest person I know, Olivia. Only because I had you. You gave me the time and space to find my footing. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself." They ended up at the train station, standing on the very platform where they had first met. Olivia could picture it so clearly, herself stepping down from the train in her traveling clothes, trembling with fear and exhaustion, searching for a man who was already dead. And Carson, stepping forward with sympathy in his eyes, offering help to a stranger because it was the right thing to do. "Do you ever think about Herman?" Olivia asked quietly. "About what your life would be like if he had lived?" "Sometimes," Carson admitted. "I think about how he wanted a family, wanted someone to share his life with. He never got that chance. In a way, I am living the life he should have had. I married the woman he chose. I run the ranch he built. I have the family he wanted. I hope he knows that we honor his memory, that we have not forgotten him." "We should visit his grave," Olivia suggested. "Pay our respects." They walked to the small cemetery at the edge of town, finding the simple marker that bore Herman's name. Someone, probably Carson, had been maintaining it, keeping the weeds clear and the stone clean. "Herman, I hope you can hear me," Olivia said softly. "I never met you in life, but you changed my life nonetheless. You brought me to Texas. You gave Carson a chance when he had nothing. You built a good ranch and treated people well. Your legacy lives on through us and through our children. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for choosing me. I hope you have found peace." Carson wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and they stood in silence for a moment, honoring the man who had inadvertently brought them together. As they walked back toward the hotel, Olivia felt a sense of completion, of circles closing and new ones beginning. Her life had not turned out at all as she had planned that day on the train, but it had turned out so much better than she could have imagined. More years passed. Henry grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, learning every aspect of the cattle business and proving himself a skilled horseman and capable cowhand. Rose was bright and spirited, with her mother's determination and her father's kind heart. James was quieter, more thoughtful, but showed an unexpected talent for drawing and painting that both parents encouraged. When Carson turned 40, the ranch hands threw him a surprise party, complete with a cake Olivia had baked in secret and decorations the children had made. Standing in the middle of the celebration, surrounded by his family and friends, Carson caught Olivia's eye across the room and mouthed the words, "I love you." She mouthed them back, feeling the same surge of affection she had felt on their wedding day in the early days of their courtship, that first moment on the train platform when he had promised her safety. They had built something good together, something lasting. The ranch was successful and growing. Their children were healthy and happy. They had friends, community, a place in the world they had earned through hard work and dedication. But more than any of that, they had each other, and that had made all the difference. On the 15th anniversary of the day, Olivia had stepped off the train in Dalhart. Carson surprised her with a picnic out on the prairie, just the two of them. They rode out in the early morning, the summer heat not yet oppressive, and found a spot near a small creek where cottonwood trees provided shade. As they ate the lunch Olivia had packed, Carson pulled a small wrapped package from his saddlebag. "What is this?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Open it and see." Inside was a silver locket on a delicate chain. When Olivia opened it, she found two tiny photographs, one of her and Carson on their wedding day, the other of their 3 children. "Carson, it is beautiful," she breathed. "I wanted you to have something to commemorate the day we met," Carson explained. 15 years ago today, you stepped off that train and changed my life forever. Best decision Herman ever made was sending for you, even if things did not work out the way anyone expected." Olivia fastened the locket around her neck, feeling the weight of it settle against her heart. "Do you know what I remember most about that day?" "What?" "The way you looked at me. Not with pity, though you had every reason to pity me. Not with calculation, wondering what you could get out of the situation. You looked at me with kindness, with genuine concern. You told me I was safe with you, and I believed you. I do not know why I believed you, but I did. That moment, that simple promise, gave me the courage to stay, to try, to open my heart to the possibility of something better." "And I meant every word," Carson said. "From that moment to this one, I have wanted nothing more than to keep you safe, to make you happy, to give you the life you deserve." "You have given me more than I ever dreamed possible," Olivia said softly. "A home, a family, a love that sustains me through everything. You have given me yourself, Carson, and that is the greatest gift of all." They kissed there under the cottonwood trees, with nothing but the prairie wind and the creek's gentle burble for company, and Olivia felt the same flutter in her stomach she had felt as a young woman falling in love for the first time. Some things never changed, no matter how many years passed. As they rode back to the ranch that evening, the sun setting in its usual spectacular display, Olivia reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her here. She had come to Texas expecting one life and had found something entirely different, something infinitely better. She had learned that sometimes the greatest blessings came disguised as disasters, that closed doors led to open windows, that the courage to keep going even when terrified could lead to rewards beyond imagination. The ranch house came into view, lamplight glowing warmly in the windows, smoke curling from the chimney. Their children would be inside, probably bickering about something inconsequential, filling the house with noise and life. The hands would be in the bunkhouse, settling in for the evening, their day's work done. Everything was exactly as it should be. "Welcome home," Carson said as they dismounted at the barn. "Welcome home," Olivia echoed, but she was not talking about the physical structure of the house or even the ranch itself. She was talking about this life they had built together, this family they had created, this love that had grown from the seeds of a chance meeting 15 years ago. Home was Carson's hand in hers as they walked toward the house. Home was the sound of their children's laughter. Home was the land they worked and the life they had chosen. Home was the promise he had made and kept every single day without fail. She was safe with him. She always had been. And she always would be. Inside the house, Henry looked up from the book he was reading to Rose while James drew pictures at the table. "Mother, Father, you are back. Did you have a nice ride?" "We did," Olivia confirmed, hanging up her hat and moving to the stove where a pot of stew was warming for supper. "Very nice indeed." Carson came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Best 15 years of my life," he murmured so only she could hear. "Mine too," Olivia whispered back. "Mine too." That night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Carson and Olivia sat on the porch swing he had built years ago. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by any city lights, stretching from horizon to horizon in a glittering display. An owl hooted somewhere in the distance, and the night breeze carried the scent of sage and grass. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had stayed in Boston?" Carson asked idly, his arm around her shoulders. "Not really," Olivia said. That life was not really a life at all. I was just existing, just trying to survive day to day. Here I am living. There is a difference. I am glad you came to Texas. Glad you took that train, answered that advertisement, took a chance on a future you could not see. I am glad Herman chose me from all those other women who wrote to him. I am glad you met me at the station that day. I am glad you offered me a job instead of just sending me back east. And I am very glad I fell in love with you. Not as glad as I am that you love me, Carson countered. I was just going through the motions before you, Olivia. Working, eating, sleeping, repeat. You gave me a reason to build something, to dream, to hope. You gave me a family and a future worth having. They rocked gently in the swing, comfortable in the silence in each other's presence. They had said everything that needed to be said and could simply exist together, two halves of a whole that worked perfectly. What do you think the next 15 years will bring? Olivia wondered aloud. Henry will probably take over more of the ranch operations. Rose will break some poor man's heart before she finally settles down. James will continue making beautiful art that nobody in the family quite understands but everyone admires. We will probably have grandchildren before too long, which makes me feel ancient. The ranch will keep growing. We will keep living and loving and figuring it out as we go. That sounds perfect. It does it not? Simple and ordinary and absolutely perfect. And it was. As the years continued to unfold, the Gray family remained the heart of the Gaines Ranch, now officially renamed the Gray Ranch on the day Carson finalized the purchase. Henry did indeed take on more responsibility, eventually becoming a full partner with his father. Rose married a schoolteacher from town, a gentle man who loved her spirit and did not try to tame it. James surprised everyone by selling several paintings to buyers in Dallas and starting a modest career as a Western artist while still helping on the ranch. Carson and Olivia grew older together gracefully, their love deepening with each passing year. They welcomed grandchildren into their lives, delighting in the next generation even as they reflected on their own journey. They faced challenges as they came, droughts and hard winters, sick cattle and broken equipment, the normal trials of ranch life. But they faced them together, and that made all the difference. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was full of noise and laughter, children running everywhere, food covering every surface, family surrounding them. Carson and Olivia stood on the porch watching it all, marveling at what they had built. 30 years, Olivia marveled. How did that happen so fast? I have no idea, Carson admitted. Seems like yesterday you were stepping off that train, looking so scared and brave at the same time. You told me I was safe with you. And you are. You always will be. As the sun set over the Texas prairie one more time, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and purple, Carson and Olivia Gray stood together surrounded by the family they had created, the life they had built, the love that had sustained them through everything. They had started as strangers brought together by circumstance and tragedy, but they had become partners, lovers, best friends, soulmates. It had not been the life Olivia had planned when she boarded that train in Boston so many years ago. But it was, without question, the life she was meant to live. Every choice, every hardship, every moment of fear and doubt had led her here, to this place, to this man, to this beautiful, imperfect, absolutely perfect life. And she would not change a single thing.